So there have been news items of late featuring a politician that was discussing how allegedly Hitler could not have done what he did so readily to the Jews had the Jews been armed. It's become a very controversial piece, and I'm having a lot of trouble understanding why. I mean, it reasons to stand, of course, that if the Jews had guns and were heavily armed, that of course Hitler would have had a much more difficult time accomplishing his goals. Isn't that just common sense? Wouldn't that also apply to the Native American situation, where the Native Americans were virtually slaughtered here in America, and of course the blacks regarding slavery? What if the blacks were armed? Do you think slavery would have been an easy task to take on if the blacks were armed? I don't think so. So the Second Amendment issue is huge. We're seeing constant reference anytime there's a school shooting or a mass shooting of any kind to the idea that guns need to be curtailed, when the exact opposite should be happening. Since the Second Amendment is a part of our Bill of Rights, its original intention was to help people protect themselves from our very corrupt government, as was all of the Bill of Rights was designed to help foster protection of the people. So wouldn't it reason to stand that if you're an American and you're a politician, whoever you are, discussing guns in the context of a mass shooting, even though they're completely unrelated, one is based on illness, a shooter, and the other is based on an inherent right that all Americans have, that you would of course be talking about arming ourselves more, so that if a mass shooter was come up against, more people would be armed, creating a likely very different outcome, very different scenario. How is a person who is mentally ill, who wants to slaughter a bunch of people, going to approach that subject if they know that the people that they're aiming for are all armed, or that most of them are armed? Don't you think it would be a much more difficult task to carry out? Another thing the anti-gun people don't understand, the fundamental thing that they never understand, is that the Second Amendment, nothing to do with hunting or self-protection, not really. It was always about us being able to protect ourselves from our government. Now, without that in place as the Second Amendment, these people who speak out against guns wouldn't even have been able to speak out their ignorant opinions relating to guns had it not been for the guns themselves. Think about it. If the guns weren't in place to keep our government under control, our government would decide, much like perhaps North Korea, no, you can't speak your opinion, no, you can't say what you want, because we're going to come and get you and imprison you or kill you if you try to, etc., etc. So then the next argument comes up, well, the military has all these guns, so we can't possibly fight them. Well, the truth of the matter is that America has the largest army that there is in the world, even bigger than China's army. It's called the Gun Owners of America. Now, how much easier it would be for a very corrupt U.S. government, if the U.S. government was corrupt, which I'm not saying they are, a little sarcasm maybe. How much more difficult would it be for them? How much more easy would it be for them to accomplish their goals if the people were not armed? Do people actually want disarming of the people, whereby only the military and police have guns? Is the U.S. government proven themselves to have no corruption and to be that trustable? Okay, so the argument is always about the mass shootings. This is always the excuse that is used by the politicians to disarm the people as much as they can, slowly, incrementally. That's how negative change is always enacted by the government. Again, as I said, it's never about arming the people more in conjunction with being an American and supporting that Second Amendment within the Bill of Rights. It's about taking away from the rights. What does that tell you about politicians and government agenda as far as when it comes to the people? Doesn't it speak volumes? Doesn't it say everything? The most important point to remember is that these happenings with these ill people that are killing other people, it has nothing to do with an inherent right such as the Second Amendment. Nothing. They try to cross-correlate it, just like spoons make people fat, but it has nothing at all to do with it. So it is the brainwashing of the people, most of which is happening at as early an age as they can possibly muster, especially within the public school system and especially within colleges, to suggest to young people, get it embedded in their minds, that guns and mass shootings and illness has something to do with the government's suggests that government can have permission, and why they can have permission to remove rights from the people. That is always what government is trying to convince people of. This is a form of brainwashing. Now, as far as these people who are ill and who are killing people, why are there so many more mass killing? I certainly believe that there are reasons for this. It does boil down to mental illness. It does boil down to changes in our environment, the food we're eating, the water, the massive amount of drugs we're taking, especially the legal drugs. All of these things are factoring into people's mental health. There is something clearly wrong. However, that has nothing to do with the altering or affecting of any inherent right ever. Don't let any politician try to convince you it has anything to do with it. They are two distinctly separate issues. The Bill of Rights and the rights that we have inherently have nothing to do with anything at all. The only thing that ever should be done with them is to expand upon them. Never, ever reduce them. That's the American way.